Hi, this is Jenny, and I am out on this pre-Christmas Eve day in the woods behind my apartment. We have some nice redwoods and a path. I'm in a circle of trees right now, and it feels really healing and it feels good. There's nothing like nature to just kind of lift your spirits. I'm remembering back to a Christmas when I was a little girl. Well, I was 10 years old, and we had something unusual happen. It kind of started when my grandpa in October decided he was going to drive his car, which was a black and yellow Rambler Nash station wagon. Very unusual at the time. This was in the 50s. And he was going to drive it to Ohio to see his sons. We lived in California at the time in a place called Benicia. And Grandpa was really proud of himself because he had an alcohol addiction for many years and had gotten his life together and had bought a car, and he was 49 years old, and he wanted to go see his children and just show them, here I am, this is who I am today. And it would have been a good thing, but Grandpa had emphysema really bad. The doctors thought it wasn't a really good idea, but he took oxygen with him. And my mom asked him, she said, tell me, Grandpa, when are you going to be back? Because his time there was indefinite. It was just going to be a case of let's feel this out and see how it works. And he said, well, I don't really know, but I'll be home for Christmas. Well, Grandpa went to Ohio, and he was there for 2 days when they put him in the Veterans Hospital, and he died. So, as far as we were concerned, Grandpa hadn't made it home for Christmas. It was around the 19th of December when we usually put up the tree in our small home in Benicia. We lived about 6 blocks on the same street down from where Grandpa lived. And back in the day, the lights were, if one went out, they all went out, and it was a real pain. And this Christmas, we tested the lights. There was one string that was bad. We put that aside and threw that out. And then we put the rest on the tree, and then put icicles on it and the bulbs and everything, and plugged it in. And when we did, there was a string of lights that didn't work, and my mom and I couldn't believe it, and we were really disgusted because that was a real thorn in the side to have a string of lights that wouldn't work, and you just couldn't determine which one was burned out, and they were very old anyway. Most everything we had was old. So Mom said, get me the scissors, and I got her the scissors. We got a trash can nearby, and she began to cut the string of lights in between each light so that the segments were maybe about, that long, and about, I'd say 5 inches apart. And we had all these pieces and parts of lights, and she says, Jenny, get that garbage can now. It was over in the corner of the room. We brought it in from the kitchen area, and we went to go under the tree to get all these pieces of lights, and there were no pieces of lights. There was one long string of lights with one cut in the middle of it. And my mom and I looked at each other and said, what's going on here? This is crazy. And we just couldn't believe it. And I says, I don't know, and we picked it up, and I'd seen Mom cut all the lights, and we'd seen the pieces laying down on the tree skirt, and we just put them in the garbage can, and as one long piece with a cut. And then, Mom and I started to spook up a little bit. And then we plugged in the tree again, and none of the lights worked. And that's when my mom said, Jenny, I think we're being haunted. And she was kind of kidding, but she was halfway not kidding. And I said, if there's a ghost here, being a 10-year-old kid at the time, if there's a ghost here, go away. And when I said that, the kitchen blind flew up. Back in the day, they were the pull-down shades. And the shade flew up and it spun around like it was on a spring, and the lights came on. And we felt Grandpa was letting us know he'd been home for Christmas, that he was there in spirit, if not in the flesh. Well, time went on. We had the kitchen table set for Christmas. Mom accidentally set a plate, an extra one, and she says, oh no, and she picked it up, and we thought of Grandpa, of course. Of course, we thought of him. Grandpa loved Christmas more than anything. He just was way into it. And that was kind of unusual, but he was, and he'd always have to be there when I opened my presents. And you know how it is when you're a kid, you gotta wait for the grandpa to come. And when we lived in Vallejo, we had to wait for him to come from Benicia. But nonetheless, Grandpa was into Christmas. And it was a year or so later, and it was Grandpa's birthday. Now, when Grandpa went to Ohio, he took his black and yellow Nash Rambler station wagon, which I've never seen one since it, except this one day that it was Grandpa's birthday. And he took it with him, and my uncle in Ohio got to keep the car. So every time Grandpa would drive down our street, he would honk in front of our house. And it just so happened on his birthday, a black and yellow Nash Rambler station wagon drove down our street and honked in front of our house. And somehow it was like Grandpa saying, I'm looking in on you. Not that I'm a believer in ghosts or whatever. I mean, I love a good paranormal story, and I believe that things do happen. But you got to remember, I was a kid, and the only thing I was familiar with was what I saw down at the old State Theater. And, it was done by Hollywood. But really, this was the beginning of making me pretty much a believer that, there is a way that those who have left us look down on us. And things would happen at Christmas, like lights that never would blink before, porch lights, lights in the house, a lamp would start blinking on and off and on and off. And we always thought that was Grandpa just saying, hey, hi, Merry Christmas. And finally, one day I got married and I had kids of my own, and I was in the kitchen of our old Victorian rental, and I was making cinnamon rolls and washing dishes at the same time. I had a son and a daughter. They were young, and a husband, and they were in the other room. They weren't in the kitchen. And I took one of those Pillsbury Poppin' Fresh type of cinnamon rolls. I think it was Pillsbury. I don't know what it was. It was many years ago. And I popped that thing open, and there was supposed to be 8. Now there's 4 of us in the household, so that meant 2 of us. Each of us got 2 cinnamon rolls. So when I opened the package, there was only 7. And I told my husband, I said, John, you won't believe this, but there's only 7 rolls in this package. I can't believe it. We must have got the end of the assembly line. I guess I, being the one that's the most porqué, or, chubby at the time, I was always trying to watch my weight. Sometimes I really wasn't that big, but I thought I was. I said, I guess you guys get the 2 and I only get the 1. So I put the 7 cinnamon rolls on a large cookie sheet. I put them in the oven, and I continued to wash my dishes. I did not leave the kitchen. And when the 13 minutes was up and I was to put the icing on them and leave them in for 5 more minutes, I went over to the oven and opened it, and lo and behold, there were 8 rolls. And Oh, wait a minute, I got that wrong, and I can't delete this film. So what happened is I opened the oven. There were 7 cinnamon rolls. I iced all 7, and then I put them back in, and then 5 minutes later, I went and I opened the oven, and there were 8. That's when there were 8. 7 of them had icing on them, and the 8th one was fully cooked, and there was no icing on it because it wasn't there 5 minutes ago. It just wasn't. I don't know how it cooked. It wasn't there. And so that was the real time I felt, that Grandpa had pulled a trick again. He appreciated a good joke, and I figured, you know what? He was letting me know that even though I was a mom and I was about, I'd say 23 years old, 24 years old at the time, he was still saying hi. I haven't really noticed anything since. I mean, there may have been lights blinking because that seemed to happen, and he loved my mother so much like a daughter. He had all boys and he never had a daughter, and my mother loved him too because her daddy had died when she was just an infant, and it was really kind of a way where both parties got to have their daddy and got to have their daughter. And my mom would say, well, lights would blink, so he may have looked in on her. He did love her. But I just want you to know there is a spirit of Christmas. Of course, I believe that it is a high holy day. It is the recognized birth of Jesus, and his light continues in this world, but it is also my spirit of Christmas too also includes Grandpa. I hope you enjoyed this story, and I certainly have enjoyed sharing it. And this is the woods again. I'm going to do the best I can to show you. And there's somebody walking their dog. And there's the top of the trees and the sky. And for all I know, Grandpa, as well as Jesus, is looking down right now. I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas, whether it was 10 months ago, 11 months ago, but mostly I hope just people will be kind to each other and show the love that Jesus said that we should show, and just remember that we are beautiful too, just like the light of the world.